Welcome to Subramani. Mostly finance people at least should be able to understand that you have to look at the big picture, and you also have to look at the milestones, seeing whether you have achieved what you have to achieve, which means let's say you're going from Bombay to Chennai, and you are saying, am I seeing Pune, am I seeing or those kind of station. If I'm seeing Pune, I'm seeing Kolhapur, am I seeing Satara, right? Those kind of milestones. Or am I seeing something else, am I seeing Surat, am I seeing Baroda, then I'm in the wrong train. So that there is time for corrective action. So when should you do annual review of a person? I know one IFA with about 225 clients, and 220. When I say 225 clients, I mean 225 families, which means he must be servicing 600, 700 people maybe. And he does the annual review on the birthday of the couple. It could be either the husband or of the wife, or on the wedding anniversary. So he says, okay, if your wedding anniversary is on say 23rd of September, he will do it in that week. Obviously on 23rd of September that family might have some other plans, so he'll do it sometime during that week. He says this, what happens is it paces out my reviews. I don't do all my annual reviews in December or January or March or something like that. So he spaces it out like that. Why do you need an annual review? It is nice to do an annual review, especially with the family. If you think the communication within the family is not too great, you are telling a lot of things maybe to the head of the family, maybe the man who is handling with all the finances, or the woman who is handling all the finances. There is a one-to-one communication, but it is nice to have a one-to-many communication also, so that there is nothing lost, there is no Chinese whisper. What you're telling the husband is getting conveyed exactly to the wife and exactly the same way to the children. Otherwise there could be some of their own biases and their own colors. So annual review, nice to do with family. And what all should you do? This is another thing which people are not very clear. See, most of us understand that you have to think about the long term, you have to plan, etc. for creating wealth. That I'm assuming that you know. Similarly, you have to do that even for your health. It is nice to have a medical checkup done. It's not something that you have to do, but your client should have a medical checkup done, maybe once in 3 years or once in 5 years if they are below the age of 35, 40, and once in 2 years if they are above the age of 50, right? So something like that. So also related to that is a document called the living will. Living will says, in case I am hit with certain illnesses, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. I mean, there is no question. You fall in the bathroom, break your leg, it's fairly obvious that you will be treated, right? And you will be conscious of what is happening. What happens if you go into a coma? How long do you want the ventilator to be kept? Do you want the ventilator to be removed? When should it be removed? At what amount of money? You can always say beyond 10 lakhs don't spend on my medical, right? All that you want to do should be written down, because 2-3 things. One is your family will also know what you want, because it's a little emotional to say, oh, if I have cancer, don't treat me. But you can always put it down on paper. Is a living will valid in India? Answer is no. India does not recognize this document called living will. But it's a very it's an interesting case that in case of that in the case of nurse Shanbag, Aruna Shanbag, she was the court, Supreme Court actually asked, did she have a living will? Now no 23-year-old is going to make a living will, right? So living will is needed even for a 23-year-old. That's fairly obvious. But the Supreme Court says, well, if she had a living will, we may have considered it. I don't trust it, but what is the harm in creating a living will? A living will says what should be happen, what treatment should be given, how much of money should be spent on you. You just put everything in writing and leave it, so that your siblings, your children, your spouse don't have to fight about it. This is your wish, it's your life. You have a right to live with dignity, you have a right to die with dignity. You say, this is what I want, this is the money that I have earmarked, and beyond that should not be spent. You can put all that. Another thing which you can do in the US is you can create a medical power of attorney. In case I am medically unfit to take decisions, please use this power of attorney. I would suggest in India you give a power of attorney to your spouse so that she can operate some of your accounts or something like that. Just creating a power of attorney doesn't cost much money. Just take a lawyer and a draft should be available. It's not very difficult. Create that power of attorney so that when you are not around, some of those things can be done. Maybe sell the house or any of those things. Maybe redeem some mutual funds. Any of those things. Largely, in case of mutual funds, etc., my suggestion would be to keep everything in a digital format, not necessarily in a demat format. In fact, demat format is pretty bad to hold your mutual funds because redemption takes much more time. But some people do keep it in a demat form. I wouldn't suggest that. So let me summarize. Your health records also need an annual scrutiny. Maybe you need a medical, maybe you sit with your family GP or some family friend, some doctor with whom you sit and discuss your medical situation. It's not a financial thing, but the finances will flow out of it, and based on that, please create your living will. We never know when it will be needed and whether it could be needed. A medical power of attorney saying, if I am not there, my wife should be allowed to do these things. If I am not there, my husband should be allowed to do these things, right? Another very important document which people miss out during an annual review is your credit card, your credit report, your credit rating report. There are a lot of errors which creep into it. So please go and check your credit report. Make sure that only your loans are mentioned, and if you have no loans, that is not mentioned. Then if you have taken a loan and repaid in full, make sure that is mentioned, right? All these things, make sure that your credit report is accurate. Now, if you are 60 years of age or 65 years of age and you are never planning to borrow in the future, you think you don't need a credit report. Wrong. Somebody else could be misusing your credit report. It is happening all the time. It happens all the time in US. It is happening in India. Be careful. Better safe than sorry, right? Some of these things are not very difficult to do. So as a financial advisor, I would suggest that you look at the health records. Not that you're going to add too much value, but making sure that the living will is created, a medical power of attorney is created, a regular power of attorney is created. Apart from this, of course, not to do with this is your will and your estate plan. What do you want to do with your estate? Any updation needed there, right? Your son has got a child, so you want to include that, or one son of yours has got married, or a son of yours has lost his wife, and therefore you want to remove her name and put the children's name. Your daughter you have decided to pay for your granddaughter's education, so you want to reduce the amount of money which you're going to give to your daughter because you've already paid in advance by paying for the medical for the education, right? So, or you gave a medical advance to your kid who fell ill and was not covered by insurance. So you gave some money, and you thought it would be a small amount of money, but it got very big. Now you want to make a change in your will, right? You want to reduce that much from the money that you're going to give to your daughter because you've already paid for her or her husband's or somebody's medical expenses. So all that needs to be incorporated. It's very important that you plan in advance for a meeting like this. You call the client and ask what all I've done a video on that saying, ask the client what all they want and learn to ask open-ended questions, right? Describe how was your trip to Himachal, how many tigers did you see in Tadoba, how was your trip, and I remember last time you saw a tiger and a leopard in the same frame. I remember that photo, right? Some of these things so that they are more willing to communicate. Do all that. Check out all these documents, plan in advance for that and plan in advance for the future. Some change in children's education plans. A child who wanted to do medicine has decided to do CA. So obviously the 2 crores which was kept becomes 2 lakhs. So there is some more money available for retirement. Think of all this, talk about all this, and ensure that the family, the children, everybody is participating in it. Create all the documents, living will, estate plan, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, will, and all those things. All this completes your annual review, and like I said, you can choose when to do it. It is not necessary that it has to be done at the year end. could be any event or birthday or anniversary. That's how it works for one guy whom I met last month.